This session is on encapsulation. Encapsulation means wrapping up code and data together into a single unit. So let's take an example of ATM. Here the data is basically the cache, and you are trying to access that cache by means of ATM, right? You are going to ATM machine and trying to access that cache. The data here is the cache and it is getting secured here. Um, Customers can withdraw the cash by using the ATM menu. It provides you the menu or kind of methods to access the cash. It can also have control over the data. I mean, control over the cash here by, what is the control here is you cannot directly go and take the money from ATM directly, right? You have when you there is a process involved in that. You have to access the data or the cash by means of some method. Okay, you have to swipe your card and it goes and verifies your authentication, and it's also verifying whether you have sufficient balance, and then it is going to give you the money. So there is a control established over accessing the data. Not everyone can go and get the data. They need to have a card or a valid account, and then they should have sufficient balance to get the data. So this concept is called data hiding, where you are trying to hide the data, hide the cache inside it, and you are not giving a public access to the data. So you are hiding the data. That means you are making the data as private. And encapsulation is a method you provide to access the private data. So that access will be a controlled access. Okay, encapsulation is now giving you kind of a wrapper for your data. It is basically wrapping your data with the code. Actually, you are wrapping together the data and the code as a single unit actually. So if you want to access the data, you are going through the method there. That is what you call it as a encapsulation. So we'll see an example for this. Let's take a bank account class, and the bank account class is having account number, which I'm going to have it as a private. So why do we make it as a private? Because again, I wanted my data to be secured, and if you make it as a private, the issue is anyone who creates the object for this, like say outside the program, and try to access this account number, they will not be able to access it, right? They cannot access it because it is private. If I go and write a class bank account test and try to access b dot account number, I will not be able to do it because the data is private. So how do we access this then? We will be having a public method for accessing it. So the public method is going to be get account number, and get account number is going to provide a string, which is nothing but it is going to give the account number to you. Why do we need to do this? Why can't they directly access the account number instead of writing a method and just giving the it's as similar as like creating an object and say b dot account number. Instead of that, we are saying b dot get account number. So what is the difference here? The difference is they are not going to touch the data directly. You are accessing the data through a controlled way. Like imagine the example of ATM, you are not taking the cash directly, you are doing it via the method. So in this case, the get account number is not having any logic here. Like it is not having any control to access the data. But in future, if you want to write anything, any control, any algorithm to access it, like you can still do that. You can still write a code inside this get account number method using a if-else logic and prevent the data access. Whereas if you have given this access to everyone, you may not be able to write any code in future because you don't have the control of your data. Everyone you have given as public access, and everyone will be directly accessing your data and updating your data. So that is the reason always it is better to make all your classes, or it is mandatory to make all your member data to be private, and give some public methods to access that data, so that even though not now, any point of time, if you wanted to update or control the data, you will be able to do so because everyone is accessing data in a controlled way by means of a method. So they have to come through the method to access the data. They are not able to directly access the data. So anytime you want to establish any controls, you can write code in the method to control the data. That is the whole point of making it. So here I have made public, bank account, to have a constructor. So I don't have a setter method for this. That means you cannot set the account number. Instead of setting the account number using a set method, I'm going to give the constructor having overloaded to accept the account number and set the account number while the object creation itself. I don't want the bank account object to be created without the account number. So if you want to create the bank account object, you have to use this constructor in which you have to pass the account number. So you don't need another setter method to update your account number, because you are not going to update the account numbers. You are just, when you create the constructor, you'll be giving the account number that you are not going to update it anytime when you are executing the code. So that's the reason for having that as part of the constructor itself. Next is your address method, address variable. So this again is a private, and I'm giving a getter and a setter method. The setter method is used to update the address, and getter method is used to get the address. So anytime you want to update the address, you just go ahead and use the set address method so that the variable will be updated. Next thing is the balance. So balance is a private variable again. So I don't want people to go ahead and directly update balance, so I'm making it as private. Excuse me. And I will give a public method get balance to access the balance, and we have like two more methods to given to the people as a public access, like deposit and withdraw. So here you see when the users deposit the money, they are going to accept an amount whatever they want to deposit, and the balance variable will be incremented with the amount. If they want to withdraw the amount, what we are doing is, if balance, we are not just reducing the balance. If they withdraw it, we put some control over it, saying that if you have less, if you are having in your account just $1,000, and if you try to withdraw $2,000, then it should stop there. That's what it is trying to do. If balance is greater than amount, then deduct it. If the balance is not greater than amount, you should be basically having it as insufficient balance. We can put balance greater than or equal to if you can still have a zero balance. So here, account number is not having any setters because it is defined in the constructors, and I don't want to update the account number during the course of the transaction. It is still given in the first place, and we will not be updating the account number using the setters. Balance also does not have setter. We don't want to give setter method for balance so that the users will supply the balance by themselves. We cannot do that. The balance has to be done through the withdraw and the deposit method. It cannot be updated directly using the set balance. How you do it for the set address. So we establish control over updating the balance by providing this logic over, like if else logic there. Let's try to do the same thing in Eclipse. We create a package for this. We put it in woods. Okay, so we will have here on all the data members as private. No data member should be default or public. Everything should be private here on, and we will be giving getter setter methods to access that private data. Even though we are doing the same thing here, but still, anytime in future if you want to update the method, we can do that. So no one should access the data directly. They have to go through your methods to access the data. That gives you a lot of control over the data. Make the private string account number, private string address, private double balance. Okay, So you don't need to write the getter setters here. You can always go and use the Eclipse capabilities. So there is a source, and then you can say generate getter setters, which is going to give you all the getter setters for all your fields actually. But we don't need for all the fields all the getter setters. If you want to select all, you can select all, which will give you all the getters and setters. If you want just the getters, you can say select getters, which is going to give getters for all these things. So you can choose these options to choose appropriately. You can expand this and select whatever you need as well by checking this checkbox. So here we need, I want a way to get the account number. I need all the getters basically, but for setting the account number I don't need it because I'm going to do it through the constructor. For setting the address I need it. I don't want to set the balance using the set balance because I will be updating the balance only through withdraw and balance, deposit method. So go ahead and generate this. So you get address, set address, get account number, get balance. So all the getters and one setters. Now we wanted to do a constructor because I don't want to allow the user to create a bank account object without giving the account number. So I'll go ahead and say source constructors, and I don't want all these fields to be supplied in the constructor. So I'm just going to deselect all, just choose account number alone, generate. So this means the user cannot now create bank account B is equal to new bank account off because there is no empty constructor. And Java is not going to give you any empty constructor if you have given a overloaded constructor. Okay, so now the other two methods, which is public void deposit and withdrawal. So deposit method, we are going to take an amount and update the balance. So what the deposit is going to do is it's going to update the balance equals balance plus whatever the user entered amount. And withdrawal is going to be same thing, but it's going to be not balance equal to balance minus amount, but we have to put some control over it because I don't want to make my balance as negative here. So the customers can try to withdraw the amount, but before you put this balance equal to balance amount, I want to have a check here. So the check will be if the balance is greater than or equal to the amount, then you can retrieve this. You can do this. Sorry. If not, I'm going to give, if the balance is less than the amount you want to retrieve, I'm going to print. Actually, I need to throw an exception here, but I'm just going to print it for now because we have not covered the exception topic yet actually. Okay. Insufficient balance. Okay, so that's it. Okay, there's a space missing. Let's save this and then write a test program for this to test this bank account. Okay. So create a bank account object. B is equals new, and you have to pass the account number. There is no empty constructor for this, so pass the account number here. Then you're going to do some transactions over that. So what you're going to do is you can use b dot set address, and you can set your address. Okay, give some address, Windsor city, and you can also you cannot set balance because you don't have a balance method. So if you want to update the balance, you have to go through the deposit. So I'm depositing some $1,000, and I'm going to try to withdraw more amount. You see the withdraw method. So I'm going to withdraw like 1500. Let's see what happens. I try to b dot deposit more, say $2,000. Now try to withdraw $2,300. Okay, and finally you want to see how much balance you have. So I want to do a balance, print the balance out. I cannot access b dot balance directly because it's a private variable, so I have to use b dot get balance method, which will be giving me the balance. Let's run this program. So you see when I try to access 1500, it produced insufficient balance, and finally I got 700 remaining because I deposited 1000, then the balance incremented to 3000, and then we took 2300 from it, so the remaining balance is 700. So the intent of this encapsulation is you have to make your data secure. Data hiding is achieved by the encapsulation, and since we make them as private variables, there should be a way to access them. Otherwise, this is of no use. Only this class can access it, and you cannot access anywhere outside. So that's another reason to make it as to give this public methods for accessing this private variables. The one more reason is you would be having more control to access the data. The only way to access the data by using these methods and not directly. And anytime if you want to establish any controls or procedures, you can do this method by adding code to it. So that's a good practice to do this way.